Outside the window, a pure white snow scene greets the eye. The winter mornings in Alaska always begin with silence. I'm Jessica Miller. Even at 62, I haven't changed my habit of waking up at 5 a.m. every day. Standing in the kitchen, brewing a warm cup of coffee, I gaze out the window at the view of Miller's orchard spread before me. I'm reminded of over 40 years ago when my husband Robert and I started this orchard. In this small town near Fairbanks, everyone said, "It's too cold for anything to grow." But we didn't give up. After much trial and error, we found apple varieties that could withstand the cold and even succeeded in growing berries. Now, our orchard has become a fixture at the local farmers market, and in summer, it's bustling with tourists. It makes me so happy when everyone tells me how exceptionally sweet our fruit is after surviving the harsh winter. As I'm preparing breakfast, I hear footsteps coming down the stairs. "Good morning, Grandma," comes a cheerful voice. It's my granddaughter Emily. "Good morning, Emily. Did you sleep well?" "Yes. I have something exciting at school today." Emily, 8 years old, is the only daughter of my son Michael and his wife Sarah. They all live together with us in the big house on the orchard. A little while later, my husband Robert comes down. "Good morning, Jess," he smiles at me gently. Even at 65, his smile hasn't changed from 40 years ago. "It's delivery day today, isn't it?" I say. "Yes, I'm heading to Fairbanks Co-op." "I should be back by evening," Robert replies. After breakfast, once Emily has left for school, I put on my rubber boots and head out to the orchard. It's my daily routine to check on the apple trees in the snow. During winter, the trees are dormant, but we can't neglect preparations for spring. Around noon, my son Michael comes to the office. "Mom, I've finished this year's financial report," he says, looking a bit tired. "Thank you, Michael. You're always working so hard." "Yes," he answers vaguely. I've been worried about Michael lately. His relationship with his wife Sarah doesn't seem as good as it used to be. In the afternoon, I attend a gathering of the gardening club at the local community center. "Jessica, you'll teach us how to make apple jam again this year, won't you?" my longtime friend Mary asks me. "Of course. Let's all have fun making it together," I reply, feeling the importance of our community connections. In the evening, we all go to Emily's school event, a winter music concert. Seeing my 8-year-old granddaughter on stage warms my heart. However, I sense a subtle tension between Michael and Sarah sitting next to me, which worries me a little. On the way home, Robert praises Emily, "That was a wonderful performance." We all laugh together, enjoying this simple moment of happiness. But somehow, a small worry lingers in the back of my mind. Will these peaceful days continue? Several weeks have passed since that music concert, and the Alaskan winter has grown even harsher. As I drink my morning coffee and look outside, I see the snow falling heavily. The thermometer reads 10 degrees Fahrenheit. "It's particularly cold today," I mutter to myself while gazing at the orchard through the kitchen window. The snow-covered trees stand silently, as if wrapped in a white blanket. Despite the severe cold, today is my day to pick up Emily from after-school care. I had promised to pick her up at 4 p.m. from the YMCA winter break program. "Robert, I'll be picking up Emily today," I call out to my husband. "Oh, that's right. Be careful out there," Robert answers. He seems to be organizing some documents in his study. Looking at the clock, I see it's already past 3 p.m. I should get ready, I think to myself, putting on my coat and grabbing the car keys. As I step outside, the cold wind stings my cheeks. I quickly get into the car and try to start the engine. However, when I turn the key, nothing happens. That's odd. I think, trying a few more times, but there's no response. Feeling uneasy, I get out of the car and call out to Robert. "Robert, it seems the car battery might be dead." He looks a bit surprised and says, "That happens often on days this cold. It's an old car, after all." "But I need to pick up Emily," I say, feeling anxious. Robert offers, "Should I go instead?" "No, it's all right. Don't you have an appointment to get your watch repaired today?" I remind him. Robert is a collector of old pocket watches and had mentioned going to the town watchmaker today. "Oh, that's right. I completely forgot," Robert says, lightly tapping his forehead. "But if Jess's car isn't working, I'll borrow Michael's car," I suggest. "My son is working from home today." I go back inside and knock on Michael's door upstairs. "Michael, do you have a moment?" "What is it, Mom?" Michael pokes his head out. "The car battery is dead. Can I borrow your car to pick up Emily?" Michael seems to think for a moment. "Ah, I see. Sure, go ahead," he says, handing me his car keys. "Thank you. I'll be back soon," I say as I head down the stairs. When I return to the entrance, Robert is still there. "Everything okay?" he asks. "Yes, I'm going to use Michael's car," I answer. For a moment, I thought I saw Robert's expression cloud over. Was it my imagination? "I see. Be careful out there," Robert says. I get into Michael's car and start the engine. It starts up fine, and I feel relieved. I see Robert's figure in the rearview mirror as I drive off. The trip to the YMCA usually takes about 20 minutes. However, with the heavy snow and poor visibility today, I need to drive carefully. On the way, I feel like the car isn't handling as well as usual. Is it just my imagination? I wonder, but an uneasy feeling creeps into my chest. When I arrive at the YMCA, Emily is waving energetically from inside the building. I get her into the car, check her seatbelt, and we set off. "Grandma, guess what? I made a snowman today." Emily starts excitedly. "Oh, did you have fun?" I reply, but in my heart, an indescribable anxiety is growing. Robert's behavior, the condition of Michael's car, and today's unusually cold weather. I can't shake the feeling that something is off. As we head home, I take a deep breath. I hope this ominous feeling is just me being overly worried. With that wish, I slowly drive on. About 15 minutes after leaving the YMCA, we reach the road along the Yukon River. The snow is still falling heavily, and even with the wipers at full speed, it's hard to see clearly ahead. The white world spreading out on both sides is beautiful, but in our current situation, it feels a bit eerie. "Emily, are you cold?" I call out to my granddaughter in the back seat. "I'm okay, Grandma. But you know." Emily's voice sounds a bit clouded. "What is it?" "Grandma, this car feels strange." Emily's words make my heart skip a beat. The truth is, I've been feeling something off since we left. The steering wheel vibration seems stronger than usual, and the engine sound oddly irregular. "Strange how?" I ask, trying to stay as calm as possible. "There's a clunking sound. Daddy's car doesn't usually make that noise." Hearing Emily's words, my unease turns into certainty. Something is wrong. It might be dangerous to continue driving like this. Just then, I spot a small parking area ahead. It's a viewpoint for the Yukon River. Usually, it would be crowded with tourists, but on a day with such bad weather, no one is there. "Emily, we're going to take a little break," I say as I pull into the parking space. When I turn off the engine, silence envelopes the car. Outside, the snow is still falling heavily, but from inside the car, it looks like soft cotton fluff drifting down. I take a deep breath and try to clear my head. I've decided it's too dangerous to continue driving. But walking home in this snow is impossible too. "Emily, Grandma is going to call a taxi. Can you wait a little longer?" "Okay, I understand," Emily nods obediently. I take out my smartphone and call the local taxi company, Fairbanks Cab. Fortunately, they say they can pick us up in about 30 minutes. A taxi will be here soon. Until then, let's chat, shall we? I say to Emily. "Yeah. Hey Grandma, today at the YMCA." As I listen to Emily's story, various thoughts run through my mind. Why is Michael's car in this condition? Is it just a coincidence, or? 30 minutes later, I see the taxi's headlights. The driver gets out and checks the situation. "Ma'am, it's dangerous to keep going like this. You did the right thing by stopping and calling us." Hearing those words, I felt a chill run down my spine. If Emily hadn't noticed. As we get into the taxi, I look back at Michael's car. Tomorrow, I need to have it properly inspected. And I need to talk to my family. "Emily, you did well to notice." "Thank you," I gently pat my granddaughter's head. As the taxi starts moving, my heart is filled with deep anxiety and fear of the truth that awaits us. When the taxi stopped in front of our house, the day was already beginning to fade. The snow had finally let up, and the warm light leaking from the house windows reflected beautifully on the snow-covered ground. "Emily, we're here," I call out, and my granddaughter nods, rubbing her sleepy eyes. After paying the taxi driver and thanking him, we get out. Suddenly, the door flies open and Robert rushes out. "Jessica." "Emily." His voice is clearly agitated. Robert's expression changes from surprise to confusion, and for just a moment, disappointment. It seemed to flash across his face. "How are you safe?" a whisper escapes from Robert's lips. Those words sent a chill down my spine. Something is decidedly wrong. "Robert, what do you mean?" I ask, trying to maintain my composure. "Oh, no. I was just worried." With this terrible weather, he hurriedly tries to cover up, but his eyes remain fixed on us. "Emily, go inside." "You must be cold," I urge my granddaughter into the house. Once Emily is inside, I turn back to Robert. "About the car, we need to have it checked properly tomorrow. It started acting up on the way." "I see." Robert's reaction feels oddly detached. As we enter the house, Michael comes down the stairs. "Mom, Emily, you made it back safely." His voice seems to mix relief and anxiety. "Yes, but is your car all right? It started acting strange on the way." "Oh, that. I haven't had it checked recently," Michael answers, averting his eyes. That night, I couldn't sleep. Robert's reaction, Michael's attitude, and the condition of the car. Everything felt unnatural, as if some big secret was being hidden. Past midnight, as I was heading to the kitchen feeling thirsty, I heard small voices leaking from the study. It failed. Why didn't those brakes work? It's Robert's voice. I don't know. I was sure I had disabled them. This time it's Michael's voice. The voice of my son. Next time, we need a more foolproof method. But Dad, is this really okay? Mom and Emily. Shut up. You have debts too, don't you? The orchard's financial troubles are serious. If we can just get the insurance money, everything will work out. I held my breath. I couldn't believe my ears. But the conversation I heard was clear. My husband and son were trying to take my life and Emily's. My legs felt weak, and I leaned against the wall. My mind went blank. I can't believe it. I don't want to believe it. But this is reality. Quietly, I returned to my room and closed the door. Tears streamed down my cheeks. My husband of over 40 years, the son I gave birth to. These two were trying to take our lives. Why? The orchard's financial troubles. Debts. I can't even imagine how bad the situation must be. But even so, to try to kill family members. Emily's innocent 8-year-old sleeping face comes to mind. I must protect her. But how? Should I go to the police? But there's no evidence. Would I have to report my own family? As the morning sun begins to shine through the window, I finally make up my mind. First, gather evidence. And ensure Emily's safety. Love for my family and the sadness of betrayal. The fear of protecting myself and the determination to protect Emily. Conflicting emotions clash in my chest. I close my eyes and take a deep breath. The road ahead will be tough. But I must reveal the truth and do what's right. With the morning sun, I quietly get up from bed with a new resolve. From that night until the next morning, I stayed awake gathering evidence. A recording device hidden in Robert's pocket watch, the history on Michael's computer, and Sarah's unnatural behavior. Everything confirmed my worst fears. First thing in the morning, I headed to the local Fairbanks police station. As I entered the station, my hands were shaking with nervousness. "How can I help you?" the receptionist officer asked. "I think my family is trying to take my life. I have evidence." Hearing these words, the officer showed a surprised expression. Immediately, a detective who seemed to be a veteran was called, and I was guided to a separate room. "Mrs. Miller, please calm down and tell me everything from the beginning, in order." Taking a deep breath, I started to tell everything. The conversation between my husband and son, the unnatural car breakdown, and the evidence I had gathered. "The car I left by the Yukon River is urgent," I emphasized. "The perpetrators might try to destroy the evidence." The detective understood the gravity of my words and immediately gave instructions to his subordinates. "Head to the scene right away and secure the car. Evidence preservation is the top priority." A few hours later, I received a call from the police. "We've successfully secured the car." As expected, the brakes had been deliberately cut. Hearing this report, the last hope in me vanished. I felt like I was being confronted with the reality of the situation once again. After that, the police investigation progressed rapidly. Emily and I took refuge in a safe place and fully cooperated with the investigation. A few days later, the whole picture became clear. At the police station, I received a detailed report from the detective in charge. "Mrs. Miller, I'm going to share the results of our investigation." The detective's expression was stern, but also showed a hint of sympathy. "Yes." My voice was trembling. The brakes of the secured car were indeed deliberately cut. It seems to have been a meticulous plan to stage an accident on the snowy road. I held my breath at those words. Furthermore, we found evidence of conspiracy between your husband, Mr. Robert, and your son, Mr. Michael. There were email exchanges between the two and suspicious movements in their bank accounts. The detective paused for a moment, gauging my reaction. I nodded for him to continue. "Regarding the motive, it seems the orchard's management was in a dire situation. Harvest yields had drastically decreased due to abnormal weather in recent years, leading to substantial debt. Moreover, Mr. Michael had separate debts as well." I had no idea about any of this," I said. "Yes. And it seems they had their eyes on your and your granddaughter's high-value life insurance policies. They probably thought all their problems would be solved if they could get the insurance money." I couldn't hold back my tears. I had worked so hard for my family. Why didn't they come to me for help? And the detective hesitates a bit before continuing. "We've discovered that Mr. Michael's wife, Mrs. Sarah, was also aware of this plan." "Sarah too." My heart was completely shattered. Mrs. Sarah wasn't directly involved, but she knew about the plan and didn't stop it. Rather, it seems she was in agreement with it. After hearing everything, I let out a deep sigh. What happens now? Mr. Robert and Mr. Michael will be arrested for attempted murder and attempted insurance fraud. Mrs. Sarah will likely be questioned on suspicion of conspiracy. Reality weighs heavily on me. The betrayal by my family, the orchard's crisis, and our future life. However, remembering Emily's smile, I renewed my determination. I vowed in my heart to overcome this ordeal and build a new life. Following the police investigation results, the prosecution swiftly moved to press charges. When the trial began, local media reported extensively, throwing our small town into turmoil. When I first faced Robert, Michael, and Sarah in court, my heart was filled with complex emotions. Those who were once my beloved family now sat in the defendant's box. The trial lasted for several weeks, and I took the witness stand. While speaking, I kept Emily's face in my mind, mustering all my courage. On the day of the final arguments, the prosecutor demanded severe sentences. The defense pleaded for leniency, but the evidence was clear. On the day of the verdict, the judge sentenced Robert to 15 years and Michael to 10 years in prison. Sarah received a 2-year suspended sentence. After the sentencing, Robert looked at me and said in a faint voice, "Jessica, I'm truly sorry. I was so caught up in the business." Michael also apologized tearfully, "Mom, the debts kept piling up, and I didn't know what to do." However, their words didn't reach my heart. As I was leaving the courthouse, Emily squeezed my hand and said, "Grandma, let's do our best together. Everyone loves your apple jam." Those words brought tears to my eyes that I couldn't hold back. When we returned home, I had to face the orchard's debts and management issues. As I was at a loss, our neighbor Martha introduced me to the Alaska Legal Services Corporation. "They'll surely help you. If you explain your situation, you should be able to get appropriate advice," Martha said. Encouraged by Martha's words, I contacted the Alaska Legal Services Corporation the next day. Speaking with a lawyer who listened attentively to my story, I felt a glimmer of hope. "Mrs. Miller, let's start by proceeding with the divorce and removing Michael from the orchard's management," the lawyer suggested. Hearing those words, I let out a deep breath. Divorcing my husband of over 40 years. Parting ways with my son. While my heart felt constricted, I knew I had to move forward, for Emily's sake and my own. "I understand. Please proceed," I answered. The following months were filled with legal procedures. However, unexpected support also came our way. The local community rallied to help rebuild the orchard. "Jessica, if there's anything we can do, just let us know," my longtime friend Mary said. She was the president of the local gardening club and gathered many volunteers. One morning, when I arrived at the orchard, more than 20 people from the community had gathered. Everyone was holding shovels and buckets, ready to help. "Everyone, thank you." I choked up with emotion. From that day on, the orchard began to transform little by little. With the help of the community, we pruned old trees and planted new saplings. An organic farming expert gave us advice on soil improvement, and students from the local university's agriculture department came to help as part of their research. Emily also eagerly helped out. "Grandma, this apple tree will surely grow big by the time I'm grown up," she said, looking at a sapling with hope-filled eyes. Legal issues were also gradually resolved. With the help of the Alaska Legal Services Corporation, we proceeded with the divorce from Robert and completely removed Michael from the orchard's management. However, many challenges still remained. Repaying debts, finding new distribution channels, and above all, securing Emily's future. But there was no turning back now. "Emily, you know what? Grandma has a new idea," I said to my granddaughter one day. "I'm thinking of starting an agritourism business at our orchard. How about apple picking and jam making experiences?" Emily's eyes lit up. "Wow, that's amazing. I want to be in charge of explaining about apples to the customers." Hearing those words, I could smile from the bottom of my heart. For this child, I can overcome any difficulty. I was sure of it. Rebuilding the orchard wasn't an easy journey. There were times when I felt like giving up. But Emily's smile and the support from the community became my emotional pillars. And slowly but surely, Miller's Orchard was reborn into a new form. 5 years have passed since then. Miller's Orchard has changed beyond recognition. Today, the Fairbanks Farmers Market is bustling as usual. "Jessica, the taste of this year's apple pie is exceptional," a regular customer calls out with a smile. Emily, now 13 years old, is enthusiastically explaining apple varieties to tourists. Her bright smile seems to heal the hearts of visitors. The other day, Michael, who was recently released on parole, visited the orchard. At first, I was hesitant, but after hearing his sincere apology and determination to rehabilitate, we've begun to walk the path of reconciliation little by little. I received a letter from Robert saying he's participating in gardening therapy in prison. He wrote that he wants to work in the orchard after his release. That decision is still difficult for me, but I don't intend to completely close the door. Life is full of unexpected turns. But surrounded by the people we love and this beautiful orchard, we are surely grasping happiness. The gentle rays of the morning sun peeked through the window, gently waking me. Glancing at the clock, I saw it wasn't even 6 a.m. yet. The habit of rising early, ingrained from years of teaching, hadn't changed even after retirement. As I slowly rose from bed and opened the window, a refreshing spring breeze caressed my cheeks. "Well, let's do our best today too," I murmured to myself, as if trying to boost my own spirits. My name is Martha Thompson. I'm 62 years old now. I taught English at the local high school for 35 years before retiring 2 years ago. These days, I live with my son Robert, his wife Sarah, and my adorable 5-year-old grandson Jimmy. While preparing breakfast, my thoughts drift to my family. Robert works for a local construction company. He's earnest and hardworking, but lately, he's been looking a bit worn out. Sarah is a kind and thoughtful daughter-in-law. She's a full-time homemaker, dedicated to housework and childcare. And then there's Jimmy. Just seeing that child's smile warms my heart. Good morning, Grandma. I turned around to find Jimmy still in his pajamas, rubbing his sleepy eyes. Good morning, Jimmy. You're up early, I said. I picked up my grandson and kissed him on the cheek. The soft scent of his hair reminded me of the youthfulness of my former students. Breakfast time. The sight of my family gathered around the table fills me with happiness. However, lately, I've been sensing something off. The warmth between Robert and Sarah doesn't seem the same as before. After finishing breakfast and seeing Jimmy off to kindergarten, I start tending to the garden. As I care for the flowers, I'm reminded of my former students. Watching them grow was one of the great joys of my life. And now, I'm deeply grateful for the time I get to spend with my beloved family. Finishing up in the garden, I return to the house to find Sarah lost in thought in the living room. Her expression seemed tinged with sadness, as if she had something weighing on her mind. Sarah, is everything all right? I gently called out to her. Sarah looked up, a bit startled, and forced a smile. Oh, Martha. I'm fine, just thinking about some things. I sat down next to her and gently placed my hand on her shoulder. You've seemed troubled lately. Would you like to talk about it? Sarah hesitated for a moment before letting out a deep sigh. Actually, I'm worried about Robert. Her words sent a wave of anxiety through my chest. What do you mean? Robert's been acting strange lately. I don't know if it's work stress, but he's been coming home late, and when he is home, he seems irritable. There were tears glistening in Sarah's eyes. I squeezed her hand. I see. Come to think of it, Robert has seemed a bit different lately. Sarah continued, and it seems to be affecting Jimmy too. Yesterday, Jimmy said, "Daddy's scary." Hearing those words broke my heart. I could feel cracks forming in our precious family. Sarah, what specific changes have you noticed in Robert? I asked quietly. Sarah thought for a moment before answering. He's been taking phone calls in secret, suddenly going out more often. And he's grown cold towards me too. As I listened silently to Sarah's story, I reflected on Robert's recent behavior. Indeed, he had become more taciturn and seemed to be spending less time with the family. Have you tried talking to Robert about this? I asked, and Sarah shook her head sadly. I've tried, but he just says, it's just work being busy, and brushes me off. Our conversation was interrupted by the sound of the front door opening. Jimmy had returned from kindergarten. Mommy. Grandma, his cheerful voice rang out. Sarah quickly wiped her eyes and put on a smile. "Welcome home, Jimmy. Did you have fun today?" Jimmy began happily recounting his day at kindergarten, but I noticed a shadow of anxiety in his eyes. I didn't miss this change in my grandson. That night, at the dinner table, Robert came home late and began eating in silence. The family conversation lacked its usual warmth and felt awkward. After dinner, Jimmy sat on my lap and said in a small voice, "Grandma, I wish Daddy and Mommy would make up." Those words tightened my chest. As I gently embraced Jimmy, I wondered what I could do to protect my family's happiness. That morning began like any other ordinary day. However, deep in my heart, I felt an ominous premonition swirling. At the breakfast table, Sarah's chair was the only one empty. When I asked, "Where's Sarah?" Robert answered expressionlessly, "Seems she left early." His attitude struck me as odd, but I didn't press further. All day long, there was no word from Sarah. As evening approached, a heavy rain began to fall outside. As the wind howled and trees swayed violently, my anxiety only grew. "Robert, hasn't Sarah come back yet?" I asked. He avoided eye contact and curtly replied, "She's probably working late." As night fell, the storm intensified. My heart raced to the sound of rain pelting the windows and distant thunder. Suddenly, I heard Robert cry out, "Jimmy!" We frantically searched the house, but Jimmy was nowhere to be found. "He might have gone outside," Robert said. Trembling with fear, I grabbed a flashlight, put on a raincoat, and dashed outside. Beaten by the fierce rain and wind, I searched the garden. "Jimmy! Jimmy!" I called out repeatedly, but there was no response. Then, I spotted the old doghouse in the corner of the garden. From there, I could faintly hear the sound of sobbing. "Jimmy!" I called out as I approached the doghouse. Peering inside, I found Jimmy sitting there, shivering. "Grandma," Jimmy said in a tearful voice. I quickly scooped Jimmy up and carried him back to the house. Robert was waiting at the entrance, but his expression was strangely calm. In the living room, I wrapped Jimmy in a blanket and gave him a warm drink. Gently, I asked, "Why did you go outside?" Jimmy answered in a trembling voice, "Daddy, to Mommy." "What did Daddy do to Mommy?" I asked, holding my breath. And then, Jimmy's next words changed my world completely. "Daddy pushed Mommy into the incinerator." In that moment, my mind went blank. Jimmy's words echoed in my head as if in slow motion. "What do you mean?" I asked in a shaky voice. Jimmy continued between sobs, "Daddy and Mommy were fighting loudly, then Daddy dragged Mommy to the incinerator." I was at a loss for words. Looking at Robert next to me, I saw his face had turned pale. "No, that's not." Robert mumbled, but his voice lacked conviction. From that night on, my world changed completely. Even as morning came, it felt like last night's nightmare was still continuing. At the breakfast table, Sarah's seat was empty as usual. Jimmy sat silently, not touching his food. Robert was restless, constantly checking the clock. I took a deep breath and made a decision. "Robert, I'm going to call the police." Robert looked up, startled. "What are you talking about, Mom?" "Sarah will surely come back. There's no need for the police." "But what Jimmy said." "That's a misunderstanding." Robert raised his voice. Jimmy, frightened by this, hid behind me. With trembling hands, I picked up the phone and called the police. "Yes, my daughter-in-law is missing." And I continued, choosing my words carefully, "there's a possibility that my son may have harmed his wife." After I hung up, Robert was looking at me with eyes full of anger. "Why would you?" However, his words were interrupted by the doorbell. The police had arrived surprisingly quickly. 2 officers entered the house. They carefully assessed the situation and began asking detailed questions about Sarah's disappearance. "You haven't seen your wife since yesterday morning?" one officer asked Robert. Robert answered nervously, "Yes, she seemed to have left early." The other officer began asking about the incinerator. I didn't miss how Robert's face tensed for a moment. The officers went out to the garden to examine the incinerator. Meanwhile, I held Jimmy, trying to comfort him. "Grandma, I'm scared," Jimmy said in a small voice. "It's okay, Jimmy. Grandma's here with you," I answered, but I could feel my own voice trembling. When the officers returned, they began asking Robert more questions with serious expressions. Robert's answers seemed vague and sometimes contradictory. That afternoon, the police announced they would launch a full investigation. They asked for a photo of Sarah, so I began searching for her album. As I looked through the album, I steeled my resolve. Not only would I rely on the police investigation, but I also needed to uncover the truth myself. For Sarah's sake, and for Jimmy's. As the sun was rising, the police forensics team arrived. They headed towards the incinerator in the garden and carefully began their investigation. I watched from the window, unable to calm my racing heart. Robert paced back and forth in the room, clearly agitated. "This is concerning. What will the neighbors think?" he muttered. I found his words unsettling. It sounded as if he was more worried about the neighbors' gossip than his wife's well-being. A few hours later, the head of the forensics team entered the house. His expression was grim, and my heart began to race. "We found what appears to be human bones in the incinerator," he said quietly. At those words, the air in the room seemed to freeze. Robert collapsed into a chair, covering his face with his hands. However, the forensic officer continued, "Further tests are needed to determine if these bones are recent and if they belong to the victim." With a trembling voice, I asked, "How long will that take?" "DNA testing can take anywhere from a few days to a few weeks. We'll rush it, but we need time to get accurate results." That afternoon, the police took Robert to the station for questioning. As he left, I thought I saw fear and regret in his eyes. Jimmy clung to me anxiously. "Grandma, where is Daddy going?" "It's okay, Jimmy. Daddy's just going to talk with the police for a bit," I answered gently, but I could feel my voice shaking. That night, a neighbor came to visit. The news of Sarah's disappearance had already spread throughout the town. "Martha, I'm so sorry about what's happened," my neighbor Janet said. "Actually, I saw Sarah's car on the night she disappeared." I caught my breath. "Where did you see it?" "Near the old warehouse on the outskirts of town." "But it wasn't Sarah driving, it was Robert?" I asked. Janet nodded. "Yes, it was definitely Robert. But he was alone." This new information left my head spinning. Where was Sarah, and did Robert really? After receiving this information from Janet, I contacted the police. They immediately began searching the warehouse on the outskirts of town. That evening, I received a call from the police. "Mrs. Thompson, we've found someone who appears to be Sarah in the basement of the warehouse. We're in the process of rescuing her now." My heart raced at those words. "Is she alive?" I asked, holding my breath. "Yes, she's conscious but seems to be in a weakened state. We'll transport her to the hospital immediately." I rushed to the hospital. When I arrived, a police officer was waiting for me. "Sarah's condition is stable. However, she seems to have been through quite an ordeal," he explained. When I entered the hospital room, Sarah was lying in bed. She looked thin, pale, and had dark circles under her eyes. But she was alive. That fact alone brought tears to my eyes. "Sarah." I took her hand. Sarah weakly opened her eyes and looked at me. "Martha." Her voice was hoarse. "It's okay, you're safe now," I said gently. After Sarah calmed down a bit, she slowly began to speak. "Robert, he locked me in the basement. He." She choked on her words, and I gently squeezed her hand. "At first, he threatened to throw me into the incinerator. But instead, he put me in the basement." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes. "Why would he do such a thing?" I asked. Sarah let out a deep sigh. "Because I found out about his affair." He panicked. At that moment, a police officer entered the room. "Sarah, can we talk to you?" Sarah nodded, and I held her hand as I listened to her testimony. The details of Robert's affair, how Sarah had found evidence, and how Robert had threatened her and eventually locked her in the basement all came to light. When she finished speaking, the police officer said quietly, "Robert has already been arrested. We're still investigating the bones found in the incinerator." Sarah asked in a trembling voice, "Jimmy? Is Jimmy okay?" "Jimmy is fine," I reassured her. "I'm taking care of him now." Sarah closed her eyes in relief. "Thank you, Martha." As I left the hospital room that night, I renewed my determination. From now on, I would protect Sarah and Jimmy, and walk a new path in life with them. While Sarah was recovering in the hospital, I continued my efforts to uncover the truth. With each visit to her hospital room, Sarah gradually shared more about the terrifying events of those days. I found messages on Robert's phone from an unfamiliar woman, Sarah began in a shaky voice. At first, I wanted to believe it was nothing. But I nodded quietly at her words. So, you confronted Robert. Sarah closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Yes. But he flew into a rage. That was the beginning of it all. From Sarah's testimony, the existence of Robert's mistress came to light. Her name was Carol, a colleague from Robert's workplace. As the police investigation progressed, new facts emerged. Carol had also been reported missing a few weeks earlier. A missing person report was filed for Carol, the detective in charge informed me. The timing of her disappearance is close to when Sarah was confined. This information weighed even heavier on my heart. What had Robert done? And the bones found in the incinerator. I decided to gather information from the local community as well. I visited the town library and the cafe Sarah frequented, talking to people. Mary, the librarian, had some interesting information. Just before Sarah disappeared, I saw her having a heated argument with a woman named Carol, Mary said. They were both upset, and I remember Carol shouting, "Stay away from him." Jennifer, a waitress at the cafe, also provided crucial testimony. That day, I saw Robert with Carol. They seemed very intimate. As I gathered this information, the outline of the incident gradually became clearer in my mind. However, big questions remained. Where was Carol? And did Robert really? Every night, I compiled this information in my notebook, forming as many hypotheses as possible. As sleepless nights continued, I vowed not to give up until I reached the truth. For Jimmy's sake, for Sarah's sake, and for our entire family, I had to uncover the truth. That thought kept me going. The truth came to light just before Robert's trial was set to begin. After consulting with his lawyer, Robert decided to confess to all his crimes. I listened to Robert's confession at the police station. His face was haggard, and the light had gone from his eyes. "Mom, I'll tell you everything," Robert said in a thin voice. Robert and Carol's relationship had begun about a year ago. It started with casual conversations and eventually deepened into a serious affair. Things with Sarah had cooled off. "Carol understood me," Robert explained. "But it was a mistake." The situation took a drastic turn the night Sarah discovered the affair. Sarah confronted Robert and demanded a separation. Panicking, Robert threatened Sarah and locked her in the basement. I wanted time. Time to think, Robert continued in a trembling voice. But the most shocking truth was yet to come. Robert began to speak painfully about Carol's disappearance. That night, Carol came to the house. She said she wanted to talk about Sarah. Robert's eyes filled with tears. But we argued. Robert and Carol's argument escalated, and he accidentally pushed her down the stairs. "Carol," she stopped moving. I got scared. Robert covered his face with his hands. In a panic, Robert tried to dispose of Carol's body in the incinerator. And in the process, Jimmy witnessed it. When Jimmy saw me, I didn't know what to do anymore. As I listened to Robert's confession, I was at a loss for words. the terrible crime my son had committed, and how he had imprisoned Sarah and destroyed our family to hide that crime. I threatened Sarah to hide everything, Robert said finally. But I'm not running away anymore. I'll take responsibility for everything. After finishing his confession, Robert hung his head low. I looked at him with mixed emotions. As anger, sadness, and love for my son intermingled, I thought about the long road ahead. A few days after Robert's confession, he was formally arrested and sent to court. I watched from in front of the police station as Robert, now in handcuffs, got into the police vehicle. His back was hunched, and there was no trace left of my once proud son. "Mom, I'm sorry," he said, turning back before getting into the car. Those words tore my heart to pieces. Sarah was discharged from the hospital and came to recuperate at our house. Her eyes held deep sadness, but also a glimmer of new determination. "Martha, I'm so grateful you're here," Sarah said, holding my hand. "I don't know what to do from here." "We'll get through this together," I replied. "For Jimmy's sake too." Jimmy didn't fully understand what had happened, but he was keenly aware of the change in the family atmosphere. He became more clingy than before, especially afraid to sleep alone at night. "Grandma, is Daddy never coming back?" Jimmy asked one night. "Jimmy, Daddy is going to be away for a while," I answered gently. "But we're here. Mommy, Grandma, we're right here with you, okay?" As the days passed, we slowly began to look forward. Sarah started receiving psychological counseling, and Jimmy began attending a new daycare. While supporting them, I also faced my own emotional wounds. One evening, as the three of us sat in the garden, Jimmy suddenly burst out laughing. It felt like the most beautiful music I'd heard in this house in a long time. Sarah and I looked at each other and smiled softly. In that moment, I was certain we would overcome this ordeal and walk together as a new family. "Well, shall we prepare dinner?" I stood up. "I'll help," Sarah followed. Jimmy jumped up happily, shouting, "I'll help too." This is where our new life begins.